Britain in the 1950s was rebuilding from the rubble of war. Streets echoed with hope. Ration books still filled pockets, and coal smoke curled against grey skies. Television was a rare luxury. Childhood wasn't about speed or screens. It was about survival, imagination, and small joys that felt enormous. These were the years that shaped a generation. Years of strict schools, seaside holidays, and laughter in streets that doubled as playgrounds. Step inside a world where patience was power, and every day carried the weight of history. The streets of 1950s. Britain were alive with laughter. Children dashed between lampposts, chalking hopscotch squares on cracked pavements and chasing balls into quiet roads. There were no smartphones, no screens, just the thrill of open space and endless imagination. Hopscotch and skipping ropes turned concrete into playgrounds. Boys played marbles on worn curbstones, while girls perfected double dutch under the summer sun. Kick the can meant freedom. Its clang echoed through alleyways like a call to arms for fun. There were no helmets, no organised supervision, just trust and scraped knees. Every bruise was a badge of honour, earned in games that stretched from dawn until the first flicker of streetlights warned it was time to head home. This outdoor world wasn't just play, it was community. Friendships were forged in those chalk lines and whispered dares, creating childhood memories that no console could ever replace. Would you trade your screen time for one more game of hopscotch in the open air? Shop-bought toys were a luxury most families couldn't afford. Instead, childhood in the 50s thrived on creativity. A stick could become a sword, a tin lid a steering wheel, and imagination filled in the rest. Dolls stitched by hand, wooden spinning tops, and tin soldiers were treasured like gold. Boys swapped marbles in playgrounds, while girls cherished rag dolls dressed in scraps of floral fabric. Simple things carried immense value because they were earned and cared for. Cardboard boxes transformed into fortresses. Old prams became racing carts. Children didn't need batteries, they had inventiveness. Every object had a second life, shaped by little hands and boundless curiosity. Today's endless aisles of plastic toys pale in comparison to the joy of making your own. It wasn't just play, it was pride in creation, and that pride stayed forever. For a child in 1950s, Britain, a paper bag of sherbet lemons could feel like pure magic. Rationing had only recently ended, and sweets remained symbols of joy and reward. Every bite was savoured, every crumb a treasure. Children clutched pennies, heading to the corner shop, where glass jars glowed with colours, pear drops, humbugs, licorice strings. The shopkeeper weighed each treat with care, pouring them into a crisp white bag that crinkled in small hands. Chocolate was a luxury, often reserved for birthdays or Christmas. A single bar of Cadbury's could unite siblings, broken into perfect little squares to make the sweetness last. Unlike today's constant access to snacks, these moments carried magic because they were rare. Waiting made the taste sweeter. Those tiny indulgences taught patience, gratitude, and the art of savouring happiness. Clothing in the 50s told a story of thrift and care. Brand new outfits were rare, saved for weddings, church, or the annual family portrait. Most children wore what older siblings had outgrown, hems let down, patches carefully stitched by skilled mothers. Wool sweaters carried the faint scent of mending yarn. Coats were brushed and buttoned until they almost gleamed, passed down like heirlooms. There was pride in keeping clothes tidy because resources were scarce and style mattered even in hardship. Shoes were polished daily, sometimes stuffed with newspaper when they grew tight. Repair, not replace, was the rule, and cobblers knew every family by name. Clothing lasted because it had to. In a world Without fast fashion, these garments carried more than fabric. They carried memory. Each stitch whispered resilience, and each patch held proof of a generation that valued every thread. School in the 1950s was not just about learning, it was about discipline. Children filed into classrooms in blazers and polished shoes, ties neatly knotted, socks pulled high. Uniforms weren't optional, they were identity. Teachers enforced silence with stern looks and sharp voices. Corporal punishment loomed like a shadow. Rulers on knuckles, canes across palms, a reality few forget. Respect for authority wasn't requested, it was demanded, and fear kept order where negotiation does today. Lessons were formal. Blackboards screeched with chalk as handwriting drills filled copybooks. Latin conjugations and mental arithmetic ruled the day, alongside hymns sung in echoing halls during morning assemblies. For some, these routines built character. For others, they left lasting marks. But all agree, school in the 50s shaped a toughness and respect that feels almost alien in modern classrooms. School runs by car were unheard of. Children walked, often in clusters, their chatter echoing through damp streets. Rain or shine, they made the journey on foot, satchels heavy with books, shoes crunching through puddles or dust. The walk was an adventure in itself, dodging puddles, sharing jokes, or racing to the next lamppost. Older children watched over the younger ones. There was no GPS, no parental escort, just trust and responsibility. In winter, icy mornings turned pavements into slippery paths. In summer, hedgerows and fields tempted detours. Every step built independence, weaving confidence into small everyday rituals. Today, we see cars and drop-offs crowding school gates, but those simple walks taught resilience and friendship that no backseat ride could match. Summer promised escape. Families boarding rattling trains with suitcases tied in string. Blackpool, Scarborough, Brighton. These names sang of freedom, salt air and laughter. The smell of coal smoke mixed with sea breeze as anticipation filled the carriages. Guest houses offered lumpy beds and shared bathrooms, but no one cared. Outside waited donkey rides on sandy beaches, neon-lit piers buzzing with music, and arcades jingling with slot machines. Rain never ruined the fun. It only meant raincoats and determination. Children dashed barefoot across pebbles, clutching sticks of rock candy while gulls swooped for scraps. Evenings ended with fish and chips eaten from paper, vinegar scent mingling with the roar of waves. These trips weren't glamorous, but they were magical. Scraps of happiness stitched into memory, proof that joy needs no luxury. Before television became common, radio was the family's lifeline to stories. Voices from Listen with Mother filled living rooms, inviting children to imagine worlds beyond their street. The glow of the dial felt almost sacred, casting light on faces hungry for sound. Evenings gathered families close. Laughter at comedy programs, suspense in dramas like Dick Barton. Radio spoke to everyone in equal measure. Television sets arrived slowly, black and white boxes in wealthier homes, and children pressed noses to glass shop windows to glimpse the magic. When families finally owned a set, it changed everything. Watching Watch with Mother, or the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II, felt monumental. Screens brought the nation together, not apart. Each broadcast an event that rippled through playground chatter the next day. Radio required imagination. Television offered wonder. Together they carved the soundtrack and the images of a generation. The corner shop was a kingdom of delights. Wooden counters, glass jars filled with sherbet lemons, and the soft rustle of paper bags. These details burned into memory. Children clutched pennies tightly, hearts racing with the promise of sugar. Gobstoppers, licorice strings and flying saucers lined up in neat rows. The shopkeeper knew every name, asked about mothers, and sometimes slipped in an extra sweet. Comics like the Beano sat by the till, tempting small hands with bright covers. Shopping here wasn't fast, it was ritual. Choosing took time. How many penny chews versus a single chocolate bar? Each purchase felt earned, a tiny luxury savoured slowly on the walk home. Today's supermarkets can't match that intimacy. Those corner shops weren't just places to buy, they were places to belong. Childhood wasn't all play. Chores shaped daily life. Fetching coal for the fire, running to the butcher, or queuing for bread taught responsibility early. Small tasks made children feel important, trusted with real duties. Carrying heavy buckets, counting coins, or helping mother hang laundry built strength and character. These weren't punishments. They were part of family survival in a world without convenience. Every errand carried lessons in patience and pride. Older siblings often watched over younger ones, a role embraced without question. Play paused when the baby cried, and no one called it babysitting, it was simply family. These tasks forged resilience and empathy. Childhood in the 50s wasn't sheltered, but that's why its lessons lasted a lifetime. Sunday was a day of ritual and respect. Clothes were pressed the night before, shoes polished until they shone like glass. Children wriggled into stiff collars and neatly brushed coats, ready to walk to the echoing halls of the parish church. Church wasn't just worship, it was community theatre. Hymns rolled through the stone aisles, voices blending into one solemn tide. Children sat still, hands folded, aware that any fidgeting could draw a sharp glance from mother. After service came the reward, Sunday roast. The scent of beef or lamb filled kitchens, mingling with the sweet promise of pudding. Meals were eaten together, with elbows off tables and voices kept low. Afternoons stretched in hushed tones, board games, quiet reading, or walks in the park. It was discipline softened by routine, a day that bound families with rules and reverence. Childhood in the 1950s. UK was more than play. It was a lesson in patience, resilience and belonging. It was a time when joy came from chalked pavements, warm hearths and the rustle of ration books, not from glowing screens. We've revisited coal fires that lit family evenings, seaside trains that carried dreams to the coast, and corner shops that turned pennies into magic. These were not just habits. They were the threads that wove a generation together, a generation that knew the weight of community and the value of time. Today, life moves faster, but the echoes remain. In those memories of sherbet lemons, skipping ropes and hymns on a Sunday morning lies something powerful, a reminder that happiness never needed luxury, it needed connection. If this journey brought back forgotten warmth, don't let the past fade. Subscribe now and join us as we keep these stories alive. Wouldn't it be wonderful to feel that world again?